Oh, wait a minute, just before you do. It,
Good morning. We are here this morning in celebration and in awe. Once again, welcome to the Level Set. I'm joined by the Mike Jones and Dr. Charles Alexander, and we do anticipate Attorney Jerry L. Kwame Christmas at some point this morning. I'm Attorney Larry Fields, but we are here in celebration of another one of our Titans, a foundational player that we benefit from and almost seems as a standard that is so foundational you don't even understand the full breadth of their work and the extent of their effectiveness. And we're talking about one Mr. Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, who transitioned this week. We're also inside of the 7 day window in which we celebrate the birthday of Frederick Douglass. And I believe the 21st of February was the day that these racists killed Malcolm X. And so these are all issues in this incredible month in which Carter G. Woodson set aside initially is Black History Week to look at where we are. And none of these things are by accident. And so we need to properly lay the foundation for our ascended brethren, and Mr. Jackson, and I don't think there's anyone that can do that better on the planet this morning than the Mike Jones. Mr. Jones, please.
well, good morning, Larry, Charles, and everybody. And I'm positive that there are other people on the planet that can do it better than me. But this morning, I'm what you got, so we'll do. We'll go with that. To place Jesse Jackson. Um, One of the things that I hadn't thought about Jesse for a long time, and he's a little older than me, but fundamentally we're contemporaries, okay, in the sense that I'm in the arena at the same time he's in the arena. I just get to the league after him, but we're occupying the same black political space. Not that we're both Qs, but we're not friends and we don't run together, but we're in this space at the same time. And so you kind of relate to them in real time based on what you're doing, what they're doing, what's going on. And you're totally focused on that. And then we get old, okay? And then we kind of hang it up, and maybe they invite us back for the old timers game or All Star weekend or something like that. And then you get to notice that the ancestors have requested the brother's presence, okay, and then you start to think about it, and to kind of use a sports metaphor like I want to do, you reflect and it takes you about a couple of minutes to say, "Damn, that brother could play." Okay, and you hadn't said that or thought about it like that. And Jesse Jackson could not only just play; he is a member of an elite category, and there are a lot of outstanding, talented individuals that impact and have made a difference. But there's a select few that have been transformational. And my definition of a transformational player is somebody that how they played, the way they played, changed the way everybody else had to play. Their peers had to adjust to what they were doing. and everybody that comes after them assumes this is the way it always was. And so there is the game before them, and there's a game after them. And depending on your age, uh, you get to understand the impact. I can make a statement about Jesse Jackson's impact because I saw the game before Jesse, and I experienced the game after Jesse. For a whole generation or two generations of Black Americans, they got no idea of the profound impact Jesse Jackson had because they came after Jesse and they thought this was the game, the way the game always went. Okay.
Give us an example of one of those things that is different pre and post Jesse Jackson.
Okay, well, before the civil rights movement was about uh, civil rights, literally civil rights, recognition, desegregation, things like those kinds of the Dr. King issues that anybody in the two generations I'm talking to don't understand that because they never lived in a period of time where what Dr. King and his contemporaries were doing was absolutely the necessary prerequisite for everything else. Jesse Jackson comes to civil rights uh, in the mid late 60s at the back end of Dr. King's life and work. And although he's from South Carolina, he ends up in Chicago running the breadbasket operation for uh, uh, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And it was the beginning of civil rights starting to morph into or begin occupying the economic justice field. Okay, that in the 50s, economic justice was not a thing. That kind of started in the 70s, but Jesse Jackson and Operation Breadbasket, and he's the national director of that, is a is the tip of the spear of that, and that's the formation of that. He goes into the 80s really uh, galvanizing that space, and then he adds a political dimension to it, and that is he takes Fred Hampton Rainbow Coalition and nationalizes it, okay? And it becomes the National Rainbow Coalition, and it becomes a political organization strategy of taking marginalized groups within America and in the Democratic Party to bring them together. And he, in the 80s, gives two extraordinary speeches, one in the 84 convention, one in the 88 convention. And he runs for president twice on that kind of flat point. And he did something. First of all, they changed uh, how Democratic primaries are run, and that laid the groundwork of the foundation, built the road for Bill Clinton and definitely Barack Obama to become president. It explains why Bernie Sanders can be ideologically not in the mainstream, but still an effective player in the Democratic Party. Jesse Jackson was the first to do that.
And
And
and let me just add this. I don't want to give the impression that you cannot go out and serve and be great, but he was extraordinary from the beginning. This man had a football scholarship to play quarterback at the University of Illinois in that time and
right,
opted to leave and opted to leave there and went back to North Carolina A&T where he was
right,
quarterback and then was student body president.
right,
So, leadership was in him despite the fact that, his origin initially, I guess if you look at his earthly origin was, the product of a quote unquote a non-traditional relationship between his mother as an 18-year-old with a man who was reported to be married. And through all of that, we get this extraordinary, game-changing, brilliant individual. His brilliance was such that it seemed trite. The brilliant individuals can communicate with anyone across the spectrum. And I tell you, when I had to take a back and listen and with new ears with him, even after running for president, his explanation of the voters' rights bill and the technicality of it, it was no one was able to do that better than him. So I just wanted to add that. Mike, go ahead.
No, Larry, uh, that's a great point. At one level, if you're a peer of his, okay, and I got a few summers on you guys, but you were younger when he was doing that. I'm grown when he's doing basically, he's 7 years older than me. Okay, so that kind of contextualizes it that way. And I began my political work in the late 70s. I'm an elected official by 1981, so I'm in this space. I was, and I came into politics through a little bit different door than Jesse. But one of the things, and as you were talking, and I'm gonna use this line, but as you were talking, I think if you were a contemporary of Jesse, uh, you had the same frame of reference as you remember the ABA and the St. Louis Spirits, where they had a brother that played for them. He went to, I forgot where in Tennessee he went, but James Fly Williams, okay, and he's from New York, and the Nets or the Nets were playing St. Louis Spirits in St. Louis, And so anyway, Doc had one of them great games. And the reporter was interviewing Fly after the game, and I always remember this. He asked Fly Williams, was Julius Erving the greatest player in the world? And Fly said, "Hmm, he said, I don't know. He said Doc could be the greatest player in the world, but he wasn't the best player in the neighborhood." So when you had all of these players, when you come from an environment where damn near everybody is an elite player, you, you almost have you. And matter of fact, there were a lot of them. You're talking about spaces that were filled with people like Bill Clay, a Coleman Young, a Marion Barry, a Maynard Jackson, and they were professional politicians, professional black politicians. Jesse is this outlier. Okay, now not that he's not doing extraordinary political work, but there are different. All these streams are tributaries of the same river, but you're flowing in different ways. So if you were in professional, if you were in that truly political lane, that you came through this door, you didn't see Jesse as a political player. You dealt with his social impact and all of that, but no. Uh, and so that was a whole different time, and in some ways you could say uh, Jesse kind of muddled the waters of black politics, and for better and for worse sometimes. But it's only on retrospect when I look back, and like I said, that's what I had to do this week when the ancestors requested his presence, that you start to say, hmm, I'm not playing, I'm not in this anymore. Well, now you start looking at the body of work, and the body of work was not only exceptional, it was transformational. That he changed how black politics, social action, economic, how it worked because he was that good an organizer, and how you thought about it because he was that much of a theoretician as well as communicator. So if I had to look back on the 80s, that produces a whole generation of black politicians, next generation of black politicians, social activists, where we get DEI from and all that kind of stuff. Uh, uh, Jesse is foundation. Jesse probably is the foundation of that. Everything you're calling DEI now all starts with Jesse in the 80s, beginning to pressure along with joining that with black politics, starts to put pressure on corporate America. Uh, there is no United Negro College. A mine was not a terrible thing to waste in the 1970s. That became a national dictate in the 80s, and the white corporation. Matter of fact, Anheuser-Busch was one of the first to be there, okay, with the United Negro College Fund, and that was a direct result of Wayman Smith being at Anheuser-Busch, and Wayman Smith being at Anheuser-Busch was a direct result of Jesse Jackson's pressure in the early 80s on major corporations about what they were doing or not doing relative to the black community. And that took roots so deep that by the time I'm working at Anheuser-Busch, Anheuser-Busch was not the major player inside of the United Negro College space. It was every other major corporation in America. Okay. So just from a branding or relationship standpoint, a relationship that Anheuser-Busch had that used to be exclusive, Anheuser-Busch was standing in line with the United Negro College Fund. We thought at the time you would think of it as just that was going on in the United Negro College Fund is doing this, but you didn't have any appreciation for the context in which that happened. And that context was something that Jesse Jackson was the primary architect of. And the same way with why now people can show up and think I could run for president. Because Jesse Jackson is the first non-professional politician, non-public office holder to run for a national party's nomination and become a credible candidate that ultimately speaks at the national convention as a candidate. Not a side activity, not somebody just trying to get some attention or making good noise to raise issues. His presence as a candidate. Now, if you had asked me what I thought about that in 1984, 1988, when I'm doing this kind of work, I'd have said, yeah, it was cool. Did I appreciate how profound it was? No. And that's what I mean about I'm doing a piece uh, that I lead with that, you kind of got to wait till a player leaves the arena for the last time before you can really evaluate their impact in their place. And Jesse left the building this week. Okay, so now you actually start to think about who was he and what his impact was. Because I hadn't thought about that. If I had thought about it, I hadn't thought about it in the last 25, 30 years.
Well, you have certainly given it some thought this week and added context to it. And his work certainly suggests that he was transformational. And we certainly Certainly glad that you were able to point that out and make it plain for all of us. Dr. Alexander,
Good morning.
good morning. Love to know your thoughts as it relates as we celebrate this
Coming
night.
from Chicago.
Coming from Chi-Town,
Coming from Chicago. And so,
not far from
and
Operation Red Line.
because I've been in Chicago for the past 30 some odd years, there's like very little time that you don't end up thinking about Reverend Jackson. There's literally always a reason here for there to be Jesse Jackson moments. So but I was thinking about the conversation that I joined, the tail end of the conversation that I joined in the green room in terms of, like, could we have that now, or would there be another, Jesse Jackson type of person? And ultimately, I because somebody actually asked me this also earlier in the week, my thoughts, and but I think it exactly, how you contextualize it, Mike, in terms of like you have to have all of those circumstances, and and then even then, like in order for something similar to manifest, A, you gotta have people who conceptualize the threat the way that they experienced and conceptualized the threat then. B, it's all these this whole other cast of characters that you gotta have that you don't know that you gotta have, right? So you don't just gotta have Dr. King. You gotta have, Daddy King, and you gotta have Daz, who's Maynard Jackson's grandfather. You gotta have Mays. You gotta have, you gotta have all of these. You gotta have the entire. You gotta have the entire epic, and you gotta have people coming together and moving in that same way, and and I think where we kind of struggle now, Mike, is that transformative piece, that transformative, like the implications of his transformative impact on the Democratic Party and the larger political structure is really the same impact that is the kind of impact that everybody needs to be internalizing to be able to move, period. And that's not really kind of what happened. Like, so if you're sitting around waiting on, the next Jesse Jackson, then that is not to kind of understand who Jesse Jackson was and his impact. I think that's kind of what you end up with.
Charles, let me throw this out, and Larry, hear your response as well. And this is a musical metaphor from a non-musician, okay? So which means I could be totally off base musically, but I think I'm conceptually, as a concept, I think this works. If you talk to jazz musicians, they're not playing to go back. They're not trying to go back. Wynton Marsalis is not trying to go back to be Louis Armstrong or Dizzy Gillespie or Miles Davis. What Wynton Marsalis would probably say, I play the way I play because they played the way they played. And their playing has informed my playing. Without them, I couldn't play what I'm playing. But I'm not trying to repeat or replicate what they did. I got to take what they've given me and take that somewhere else. There's a uh, um, all you guys have seen the movie Crossroads, where the little guy breaks this brother out of the nursing home, and they travel south to where Robert Johnson met the devil, and the brother's going back to DC, get his deal back from the devil so he can keep his soul. And it's the Karate Kid. Okay, that's who playing this. And so they get there. It works out. It's a great little movie. But anyway, the old brother says, "Well, I'm headed this way," and the Karate Kid thinks, "Hey man, ain't you going with me to?" He said, "No, man, I ain't going with you." He said, "What I'm going?" Basically, the Karate Kid said, "What am I supposed to do?" He said, "What the music?" He said, what you're supposed to do is take the music and take it where it's supposed to go next, not where it's been, basically." And that's what's wrong with our vision and notion of politics. We want to keep playing the same thing over. If the one art form that's intrinsically American, and it's the only art that America has produced, is our music, jazz. And fundamentally, the essence of that music, the essence of the structure requires improvisation. And improvisation is not making it up. It's after you've internalized the architecture and the poems, you're then making judgments in the moment about what options you're going to play off of, which is why other players can improvise with you because they understand the same, Charles, to your point that you just laid out, they understand the same architecture and grammar that you do. So we're in this space figuring out new forms.
And
And
we have
every time we play,
and we have modern day politicians that are acting as if they're from a set script, like
right,
individuals that
in
are
a separate,
in the clergy. The
or
clergy
in,
operates from the exact same script, the Bible, and they don't see any of the progressive aspects of it. And
right,
so we are engaged in cosplay oftentimes that has presented itself as leadership without any sort of vision. And these are individuals that want to integrate into a system that exists that is hostile towards us. So, I mean, I think that we talk about the if here and the premise here. Their ifs are all wrong.
right,
And so you have to have had, and so their ifs are wrong because there there's not a system that that literally birthed them, right? So there was nothing, because again, so in order for there to be a just like what most folks actually kind of know him for, like even like here, nobody really talking about the run, and here they talking about Rainbow Push, right? And so, but in order for people to know him as such, you gotta have Dr. Leon Sullivan. And so if you don't have Dr. Leon Sullivan, you don't have him establishing a model to you don't have him establishing the model for attacking businesses and for to give people access to shop and or to work in these various businesses. You don't have that model that SCLC borrows and then utilizes to implement Operation Birdbasket. You don't have that. If you don't have
And Doc, that model was predicated on King's actual statements instead of a synthesized statement. His statements, was if in fact you don't, if we can't work there, we're not going to shop there, but we're going to spread the pain around.
Wait a minute.
The mindset.
Well, and
But
again, that's it. And so, like, so you got to have all of these people in order for the model to have been birthed. And so, King sees Sullivan's model. He takes that model, and you got to have Ella Baker, because if you don't have Ella Baker, then you don't have a SELC. You know, like, so you got to have all of these people just in order to birth that situation, which then becomes the opportunity that Dr. King gives to Jesse Jackson, right?
wait, and Charles, Larry, I just want to go back a little bit further than that, because obviously, you know, Dr. King, Leon Sullivan, Louis Armstrong, but Louis Armstrong had to hear somebody too.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam Clayton Powell did that in 1948 in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that same black boycott thing. So I mean, so the idea of a boycott in Birmingham on a bus didn't. Now we don't, you know, it's like everything gets to be, something has to get the credit for
Something
being the
came
first.
right?
You're right. Yeah.
Yes.
But the reality is this was in the ecosystem all through the black experience, and why we can't replicate that. And I'm going back to my jazz metaphor. Is what made jazz possible was live music played in small clubs. So Miles Davis didn't hear Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie on the radio or in a seminar someplace or some form of music thing. He saw them at Pop Chambers' Riviera Club in St. Louis, and went every night for the 3 nights they was here. And he's 17, 18 years old, whatever it was at the time. And he said, I need to go where they going. Because now that he hears them, that's how he gets to New York. Now he tells his father he going to Juilliard, and he did go to Juilliard for about 2 weeks. Okay, and then he went down to 52nd Street, found Bird and Dizzy Gillespie, and that's his role. But if that club don't happen, Miles Davis don't get to hear them, and if Miles Davis don't get to hear them, he don't go to New York. And if he ain't in New York, John Coltrane and Kind of Blue don't happen, and if John Coltrane don't happen, and that first great quintet, sextet, ends with him, Cannonball Adderley, Coltrane, Bill Evans, Wynton Kelly, et al. And then the next one can't happen because there ain't no place for a Herbie Hancock, Tony Williams, or Wayne Shorter. So this is
Let me just add for the
organic.
record. Let me just add for the record. I don't want to live in a world where there is no Watermelon Man by Herbie
Right.
Hancock.
And so what I'm saying, Charles is talking about an organic process that because we've been indoctrinated or infected by a white epistemology, we think that the way you learn is in a hierarchical structure. And the way we learn is in a communal organic structure. Okay, and it's the call and response, the interaction, and we're always innovating. Okay, it's Jesse talking about his grandmother making the quilt because we don't have a blanket. We're putting pieces together all the time, and that's how we shape our reality. And what we have lost is the ability to articulate what is organic to us at a higher intellectual level, and then make the same claims for us that white America and Europeans make for themselves. Okay, it's there. My position has always been there's a black canon that explains the universe.
I was going to pivot right back to that. I was going to that
Have at it, my brother.
yes, because this is where we miss. This is one of those situations that gives you the indication that we are missing the point with regard to the black canon. That brother didn't come from nowhere.
Right.
And so, and so like when you reference Adam Clayton Powell, they in Montgomery, they went to Adam Clayton Powell and sought counsel about how to do exactly what they were doing because there's precedent. They went to Monroe, Louisiana, and talked to the people in Monroe, Louisiana, who already had a transit strike. They went just south in Alabama, down to Mobile, where they had already had a transit strike. But because we're taught the way that we talk, the little bit that we're taught,
rugged individualism.
Yes, and we don't connect all of these things, all of these people. If you don't have Huey P. Newton, it was his birthday this past week, by the way.
Yes, it was.
If you don't have
sorry for that omission.
Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale initiating the Black Panthers, then you don't have Chairman Fred, and then also you got to have the NAACP because it was the NAACP youth organization in which Chairman Fred got like his foundational organizational leadership.
Well, Bill Clay got his,
and you don't have then the Rainbow Coalition. If all of those things aren't happening, and so all of these different things occurred. He manifests in that space as all of these things are occurring, gets connected and attached. Dr. King moves him to Chicago so that he could be the national director of, Operation Breadbasket, which ultimately becomes Operation Push. In that mix, I'd imagine he meets at some point, he meets Chairman Fred, and then, after the assassinations of each, he revitalizes, makes some changes on Breadbasket, create and forms that into Push, and then brings those two organizations together, and he keeps that mission going accordingly. But most folks just think that's a him, not a them.
I also want to add at that moment, the reason Operation Push happens is because he and Abernathy had this major parting of the ways about where SCLC is going, and I'm bringing this up for a reason. That there is nothing inherently wrong with intergenerational conflict. Young lines always challenge old lines about whose pride is it going to be. That's kind of inherent in this. So this notion about leadership and I want somebody to mentor me. What you want to be is the son of a king that inherits the kingdom. You don't want to be, but truly what this requires you to be is Marlowe not caring about Avon. Okay? And out of that dialectic struggle comes the next best generation. But if you waiting to be made to inherit something, then you will eventually inherit, but you won't be worth very much, and you're going to lose it. Because my position has been, if you didn't fight for the corners, if you didn't see somebody fight for the corners, then you don't know corners are fought for and have to be protected. and then you lose the pointers, and we start all over again.
Well, the premise
Okay,
is the premise that I've been taught is you get what you can take and you keep what you can hold.
right. That's
Uh,
it.
a wise man told me that, Mike Jones. So and you know, if you want the bottom line is, you know, you don't get to be a wartime consigliere in times of peace. You know, you
Time passed this week too.
yes, he did. Tom
Tom
passed.
Hagen. Yeah,
Tom Hagen.
you're out
Right.
of time.
Yeah, yeah,
You're out of
yeah,
time.
Well, what he
yeah.
said, Papa
Papa
had
had
Jake,
Janko. I
Jake,
got you. I got you. If I had a
and I got
wartime,
you.
and you know, Papa
Right.
had Jesse Jackson. I got this cat on MSNBC. If I had Jesse
Right.
Jackson, I wouldn't be in this mess. I
You're
got
out
this
of
cat
time.
on MSNBC that can't keep his weight up, and a bunch of public intellectuals.
Right.
A bunch of public intellectuals. We out here. If it wasn't for Mike Jones, I don't know what me and Dr. Alexander would be doing.
You're out of time.
You're out of time. Oh man. But anyway, that is I mean that's it's
And so again, it's like you know, you look at this stuff and because you know part of our problem is that we're not looking back necessarily for instruction. We're looking back again to romanticize. And the romantic, you know, and when we're doing the latter, that's a defensive maneuver. That ain't about the current attack. That's about kind of retreating from the threat. And
oh
so that's
oh
kind of how we have to look at that. And you know, in much the same way, Mike, he was talking about improvisation, and like now, like I don't even think we use the word improvisation unless we're talking about acting or jazz, right? You know, live music or something like that. I don't even think people are, you know, Black folks in particular. But I was having a conversation with my grandmother, and my grandmother, like my mother, like my sister, um, were seamstresses, and both my sisters actually, and all my grandmother's daughters. But anyway, so I asked my grandma one time, like, you know, why did you stop making your own clothes? She said, because I could buy my own clothes. I was like, so you wouldn't, you didn't enjoy making your own clothes? She's like, that was improvisation. Said we made our own clothes because we had to. And she's like, when I have to, then I didn't.
Right.
And, you know, that was that. And then I kind of had a similar situation with my mom when I was decided, you know, I ain't going to buy this stuff. I can get my mom to make this stuff. My mom priced that stuff out for me. She was like, nah, I'll make this for you, but this is how much it costs. You might as well go buy.
Right.
And so we don't we're not looking back necessarily for the purpose of understanding operationally what was going on, you know. And so we look back for whatever we perceive to be the best of the moment, and that's kind of, you know, where we get frozen and stuck in time. Mike Jones.
Charles, to that point, using literally what you just said, we look now, but we don't see. And because we don't see, we never understand. And it's that lack of understanding based on not seeing when you look. It's why we keep running around in circles and never seem to get anywhere.
Indeed. And so and each time, you know, like each time we get into a moment like this, Mike, I think it just reaffirms the work that we got to do on the canon, and, you know, like literally connecting these streams of thought so that so the folks know again where we are, how we got here, and how we use, you know, that collective notion and ideation to manage now and plan and execute the future. I mean, like right now, you got folks. You have a man down in Atlanta boycotting Target, and folks are steady like, this is awesome. You know, what great leadership. Target ain't about to re-implement DEI. And even if they do, what difference does it make? DEI is gone. And so now there's this whole thing about he did it, but he ain't done nothing. And that kind of speaks again to how we don't understand whatever, so we don't understand Dr. Jackson's Wall Street project. So we don't know. So where's the exchange? There's no exchange occurring with Target. Target's not going back. And if they go back, really they ain't gonna get no more than what you already had. And so, but that's the issue that we're having, where, you know, again, we're looking at, in this space, what is the personification of professional politics.
Let me add something to that.
Mike, let me just add this real quick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tie this point, but that goes directly. You just strung your whole thesis together there. When you talk the actual practice that has been implemented by this guy in Atlanta is essentially cosplay of the developments of what he perceived an earlier movement being. And there is absolutely no advance from Adam Clayton Powell to Dr. King to Jesse Jackson's actions on Wall Street. There's no advancement. He's using the exact same thing, and it almost looks, it is cosplay. Because at this point, the issue should be, how do I build an alternative? What is, so how do I take all of those things that they've done in the past, modernize those, and build on them? But that's not what has happened. This is a romanticism of what has been done in the past, and it looks a lot like cosplay to me. Go ahead, Mike Jones.
Larry, I think you're right. And even if it's not, what they've done or what he's doing, and everybody with the DEI thing, is narrowing the agenda. Mm-hmm. And here's what I mean. If you listen to Jesse Jackson, I won't even go back further than Jesse Jackson. In that era, he was talking about education, healthcare, jobs, housing. He was not talking about, he was talking about economic justice, and justice applies for everybody. The issues of housing, affordable housing, jobs and employment, livable wages is an agenda for a people. DEI is an agenda for a class of people. Okay? And so I've given this a lot of thought. I can't remember the last time I've heard a national Black leader give a speech on jobs, education, employment, housing, and healthcare.
Let me ask you this, Mike. Mike Jones, Mr. Jones, when was the last time you heard a modern politician draw any alliance or any sort of commonality with international figures?
None.
Did.
None.
When was,
only Mukasa.
That's it. That was the last time we've heard someone speak on any of those things. Why isn't there an Afro PAC?
I think it's because, to me, it's what happens in any neo-colonial situation.
Well, there you go. You've already defined it.
yeah, and that is the the liberation struggle, the independence struggle is not sustained, and people settle, and your elites, your the part of your population that is at the top settles for Commonwealth status. Okay, and so you are still a
Mike Jones,
colony.
you're going to have to expand on Commonwealth, and Dr. Alexander, you guys are going to have to expand on that. And I don't mean to evoke E. Franklin Frazier, but I'm going to evoke E. Franklin Frazier. What do you mean by Commonwealth? And this all relates to the statement that you made earlier about essentially benefiting a class of individuals with DEI, which has always been the case. But please expand on that.
Well, basically, when you're a colony, and I'll make you England and Jamaica or England and any of the countries that, given the size of the British Empire that they control, they actually provided the administration. Think of us in segregation and Jim Crow. Okay, we couldn't run none of our own stuff. Some average, mediocre, half-ass, intelligent white person was supervising black activities. You had black soldiers but no black officers. Okay, that kind of thing. And then, for a whole host of reasons, you had a post-World War II surge towards independence, decolonization of all these countries. One of the things the British Empire did to hold on, they created something called a Commonwealth. And that is, you're still in the empire, but you still have the king or the queen is still the titular head of your Commonwealth of country, because you're still in the British Empire. Quote, you're a British citizen. But we're not going to let you do, we're going to let you run the island. But not just all y'all, the ones we sent to school, we sent to education. So just think of all the black college graduates that used to go to working class public institutions or HBCUs, who now go to Harvard and Yale and elite private schools, and then they become the leadership. And once they become the leadership, jobs, education, housing, healthcare, none of that's at top of the priority anymore, because they got a job, they got great housing, they got healthcare, and so they're looking for something else. So the black agenda goes from what's the optimum position for the masses, for the least of these, what benefits us the most, not me, to basically the only people I see are now people like me. And because what happens is, during Jim Crow, which was our colonial period, no matter how well-to-do you were, no matter what your quote status was, you was in the village with everybody else. Okay, and the leadership you was bringing, you brought on behalf of the village, because that's where you were. You couldn't move either. So the agenda you helped form and lead, if you think about Dr. King to the Adam Clayton Powell, because both of them are men of successful lineage. Okay, they, in some ways, their status in the black community is inherited. Okay, now they earned the right to stay there, but they didn't come from the back of the line to get where they were. I mean, they were kind of born up there, but in their era, because we were all under the same colonial rule, Jim Crow, your gifts were available to everybody. After that, in this Commonwealth area, which is I'll call it not integration but desegregation, black elites, E. Franklin Frazier's black bourgeoisie, gets to be separate. They can't be white, but they ain't black like most black folks anymore. And that creates a totally different dynamic.
They function like the mulattoes in the Haitian Revolution,
right,
and the coloreds in South Africa.
Yeah, and it's why E. Franklin Fraser wrote the Black Bourgeoisie. It's why Du Bois ended up rethinking the talented because what he thought was inherent in us was not. Okay,
He realized,
and that's why we have
what he
the
realized
miseducation of the
was
Negro.
a self-serving motive.
right.
And that's why we have the miseducation of the Negro as well.
But that means Carter Wood G. Woodson saw that early.
And so that's the canon, right? It starts way back then, right? And then it comes forward.
And here is something that we need to say out loud. We're not inherently more moral or ethical than white folks. There's a critical mass of us that, given the opportunity, will live down to the lowest instinct. What we had was, in times of enslavement and Jim Crow, we didn't have a lot of choices but to be ethical, maintain ethical relationships with each other, because we was always together.
Well, I mean, a cursory look at recent history will tell you that. I mean, look at Uganda right now.
Right.
I mean, look at Nigeria and the civil war that was had in Nigeria.
Right.
The Biafran people in the Igbos, subject to just the most violent of attack. Look at the Rwandan war right now.
Well, that's going to Charles's point about romanticizing the past or who we are. Okay, so there has to be a level of intellectual rigor that comes with all of this, and
yes,
maturity.
Maturity. That's it.
It's
not intellectual rigor. It's maturity.
Maturity, honesty. You gotta have all those in order to kind of to do this thing. Yes.
So it's almost
but you know what? I think we have a general problem of believing what we see instead of the biases that have.
Wait a minute, Larry, I would correct. I understand your point, but I would correct the language. We have a problem of seeing what we're looking at. Okay,
that's all I'm saying, Mike. We have a very.
We look at it, but we don't see nothing.
We're losing our cultural lens, and right. So
that's it.
Yeah, so we're looking through this through the eyes. We're looking at this through the eyes of the oppressor, and so the oppressor, his presence hasn't, really changed. Our ability to perceive as we once did is where the change is, and it's because again, just in talking about those things that we were laying out earlier and making all those linkages, it's hard for me to see where there's anything that looks like that now, where you see somebody saying, I went to him or her because they've done this and this has value. And so now I'm going to reshape it and put it out in this context like that.
Okay, to that point, Charles, what you're talking about is, how do I learn to become a jazz musician? Or how do I even know I want to be a jazz musician if I couldn't be in a club hearing them? How do I know I want to be a basketball player if ain't no schoolyards or rec centers anymore? Where
Yeah,
you know
so
what? Yeah,
and in that same space, it's like, you know, when folks are and we've had the conversation on here, like to play basketball in the NBA today isn't political. To play basketball in the NBA in 1950 and 60 and 70, that was political. That was still a political statement in as much as it was a representation of your athletic ability.
but right.
And so be so you essentially had to be of that mindset to be in that space. Larry Doby didn't go play for the White Sox just because he thought he was good. he went because I'm next man up.
Right.
And so this is the fight. And so that does not inform. There's very little, I'll say, that kind of thought still informs. You know, that I'm going into this space as an extension of the fight, as an extension of the struggle. I have a relative role to play.
And I'm gonna name 3 names that, unless you're as old as us, you don't know who really know who I'm talking about. Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Frank Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
All of them, I've heard all of them say, I have to be an extension of that. I do what I do the way I do it because Jackie Robinson did what it, and you got to stay connected to that work, and that your work is. Frank Robinson said he ended up being the manager of well, I guess it was Cleveland, and they didn't really pay him no extra money because he was a player manager. They said he was already, and he said it really didn't make a whole lot of sense, except he was going to be the first black manager in baseball, and he had to do this so others could come behind. But for him, his frame of reference is Jackie Robinson. It ain't that Cleveland is screwing me over with this deal financially. I'm going to take the financial hit because of what it means to me doing this, what it can mean up the road, not for me, but for everybody that comes after me. Because this is a door that got to be kicked open.
Yeah,
and that's a different mindset, man.
And that's not what we're looking at now across situations, right? And so you end up, you know, I'm running for office for me. I'm running for this, that, or the other for me. I perform for me. You know, that's why we got low management, right? Because it's not about the fans. It's for me.
As opposed to 30 years ago, everybody played every night if they could.
Yeah.
Because that was your job and people came to see you play.
They came to see you play. Yes.
They paid money.
It's your job to entertain.
Right.
It's your job to entertain. And so we see that across circumstances. Like we're unable to kind of contextualize the moment. So we can't figure out the why. And then we don't know. So, you know, like why it don't look like that now? Because the circumstance is different, and because circumstance is different. So is the motivation.
And I would say what those performers, whether they were athletic or musicians, but literally what they were thinking about is not the season ticket holder that comes every night, but the little boy whose father or mother brought him to the game, and you're their hero. And they may never get back to them. And you couldn't say, I don't want to play tonight, because they'll remember seeing you play for the rest of their life. And you couldn't say to yourself, I just don't feel like playing tonight. Ain't nothing wrong but I don't feel like playing.
This all goes back to the need of the canon that you all have been referencing.
Yes.
And I'm going to go and as fate would have it, this is something that I reviewed this week. This is from Fanon, and what we're up against, that we have absolutely we are drinking poison as if it's sweet. And let me refer to this. The power of the colonists' message, the systems used to impose it and present it as the truth, were such that most of the time the colonized had only his own increasingly overshadowed inner conviction to oppose to the eminently traumatizing offenses of the French press and the spectacular manifestations of the military and police power. Confronted daily with the wiping out of the last remaining guerrilla bands, the civilian could fight off despair only by an act of faith, by an obstinate belief. And that's where we are. They bought TikTok. They bought, what was formerly Twitter, and we are being given a steady diet of poison. And the only thing that we have is what we talked about earlier, Mike, is to believe what we see, and we don't believe, and we're looking and we're not seeing.
That's it. And the institutions that we used to have, our technology is now not consistent with the times. So the black press is fundamentally, it'll never be irrelevant, but it doesn't mean what it meant 50 years ago or 100 years ago, when that's the way everybody got their communications, and somebody could wait once a week. There was a time when St. Louis had 7 black weekly newspapers. So there was black information. There was information from a black perspective. I always say black information. There was information with a black perspective. There was news about the black community produced by black people that were highlighting what black people need to know. That was adjacent to, but not part of, the white communications infrastructure. And so it gave us an alternate reality, an alternate understanding of reality, I should say. And we don't have that anymore. And we don't even, you got to be as old as us to even know you're missing it. Okay? If you're younger than us, you didn't even know it existed, or you think it's some ancient remnant of the past. I mean, so there are people that show up for the St. Louis American thing, and they can mouth the words of the importance of the black press, but they don't know what they're talking about, because they never lived at a time where the black press was as essential as oxygen to the well-being of the black community. That's why it got created, okay? Because we had to have that to tell our story to ourselves so that we could understand each other.
And the truth.
And the truth, right.
Dr. Alexander, any points?
And so I agree with that point very much. And we don't see, again, those things as so even again, when we look back at the black press, we don't see that as essential to fighting the fight. We really just think of it as exist, it was something that we had, and I think that's our nostalgia piece. When we go back and we look at, we used to have all these black businesses. We used to have all these black banks. All of that is really just about the nostalgia of the moment. We're not really talking about the functional aspects or what we are actually missing by not having them. That's not really the conversation. And but what we could do, particularly in Black History Month, is to go back and study those things, right? And so, um, we're talking about Jesse Jackson in Black History Month because he passed in Black History Month, and so maybe what will happen next year is that someone will do this same type of thing, is feel compelled to do a deep dive on him, if not his birthday, then then during Black History Month, because that's when he passed away. Yesterday marks the 61st year since the assassination of Malcolm X. And so so there have been people gathering. It's his daughter, I think her name is Ileana, Dr. Ili, I think it's Ileana, but maybe but anyway, his daughter, she hosts an event every year to ponder the work, not just talk about her dad, but to ponder the work. And so this is what we got to do. This is a good time to so I was saying that also during this week, this Huey P. Newton's birthday was this week. So if you want to talk about coming up with a philosophy of struggle, the study of Huey P. Newton would be a would be a good idea. And again, it fits into the canon of this discussion today. And so, and we have to start seeing these things as not coincidental, but spiritually essential and necessary. Otherwise, we don't get the outcomes that we ultimately have.
So I want to follow up with what you just said, because I think that's been agitating me, not overtly, but kind of psychologically, intellectually. That's why I get so agitated in February, because we just screw up Black History Month. Okay,
Mhm.
you would think that
That we got this down by now.
yeah, and then understand that, look, we might not be able to beat them 12 months out the year because they just got more resources, it's more of them. But we gonna take 1 month to reload, recharge, to study, to meditate, to commune about all of this, because we're gonna own February. If whatever, if it's Ramadan or whatever the Jewish equivalent of that is, we stop, time out, whatever the hell you're doing right now. This is our ritual month. And like I said, I was started with Dr. King's birthday. And for the next 6 weeks, this shit is about us. Don't ask me, don't, yeah, don't, and it's about where we been, who we are, where we're going. And little kids have to learn, so that the curriculum for this month is not just who was the first Black astronaut, but you in middle school now. So there's an essay contest on the letter from the Birmingham jail. Okay, that all of a sudden we're in an intellectual, emotional engagement internally about what all of this means. And we leave February going forward for the rest of the year, fortified to do battle with the forces that are arrayed against us. It would seem like we got 100 different organizations. Everybody belongs to something. And you would hope, now I ain't gonna say you think, you would hope that at some point we could pull together the Black Convention movement. I mean, if Black people from the 1830s to the 1890s, probably the worst century, not the worst century, but damn sure a worse century to be Black in America than the 19th, I mean, than the 20th and the 21st, okay? if they can pull that off every year for 60 years, leave a record of it that you can go back and see.
That you can go back and study.
Wait a minute, and you had to get there by train or on horse because there wasn't no cars, wasn't no highways and shit. And our lazy ass can't fly into some place or drive into some place and do that kind of work.
Right. And again, you look at it, you look at that situation, and they convene to do the work of the people. Folks
Right.
go to that Black Congressional Weekend thing that they go to that to kick it. I ain't never heard of no policy coming out of that.
Right.
You know, and so and I ain't heard of no policy or no policy recommendation come out of any other, organization that meets that I'm even familiar with. That's and so those, like, again, when we are looking back to the past, we're not even looking at the political implications of what the people were doing at the time.
Right.
And and to contextualize going to those meetings, being a part of, what we now, and, looking back, called, the Color Convention movement, like they at all times met two conditions of what Huey P. Newton said is necessary for a revolutionary leader. A, the thought that death is imminent. It is going to happen. Not that you're trying to die, but that death could be a consequence of what you're doing.
All us?
Right? And so, no, not all of us, because all of us aren't.
No. That was the question. Was
no, real talk. Because
I know, brother. I know. I jest, but you're right.
So you got a revolutionary suicide it is simply the realization that your death could be the cost of your fight, versus reactionary suicide where you just go kill yourself, and so but to go to travel, what was the United States there in that time, in the midst of slavery and then the heights of Jim Crow or post-Reconstruction, that was revolutionary suicide. And then the other piece is, you have to remain connected to the people. And Mike, you referenced that in terms of, folks not having a clear sense of the class struggle within our larger struggle, and the disconnection that, and necessarily there's a disconnection that occurs. And that was one of the reasons they said then, and there's another reason why during the formation of the Black Panther Party, that a revolutionary has to have a means of communicating and relating to the people, which gets us back to why it's important to have a Black press, because you have to have an engine that communicates to the people, for the people. And so we're losing that, and but it all requires that we have some understanding of that in order to appreciate what it was and why it hurts that we don't have it.
And we don't have radio stations either, Doc. So, I mean, just wanted to, well, and the information is certainly underappreciated. We take these things as a grain of, foundational existence and another rung of inevitability. But that's what great leadership looks like. When things are working at your parents' homes, you don't know what sacrifices they've had to make to keep things going.
Just take it for granted.
Absolutely no idea. And we had a bevy of political leaders that push so hard, we continue to believe that positive change was inevitable. And
Here,
we're getting a cold slap in the face now. And these folks are on, and present so-called political leadership has no manner of defense that they can establish. Mike, go ahead and we're going to close out the show.
no, and to that point, Larry, and I'll close because the trying to get us back to Jesse Jackson. But the point you just raised and Charles was alluding to, the piece I'm writing about him this week, kind of opens with, because I always write my openings first and then try to figure it out after that. But I said, February 17th, the ancestors requested the presence of Jesse Jackson. And fundamentally, it also means we're turning the page. History is turning the page on this part of our journey. Because Jesse Jackson is probably the last national black leader. Now, it could be a little bit wrong, but the last national black leader who was forged in the furnace and shaped on the anvil of the civil rights movement and its more militant younger sibling, the Black Power movement. We ain't got no more. To Charles's point earlier, how did he get to be Jesse Jackson? He was forged in this furnace and shaped on that anvil. That's why he looked the way he looked. So he wasn't at that level. He wasn't an accident. Okay, he wasn't predicted. But if it hadn't been Jesse, it was going to be somebody. Because the forge was working and the anvil worked. I just don't know. Out of the weapon you two, I don't know which one is going to be the one you going to pick. But we picked up Jesse, okay? But where does that weapon come from now? Because the forge is, I don't know what a forge is, and if you can start the fire, you damn sure ain't got an anvil to shape it on.
That is for
And
sure.
that's how you get a weapon. That's how a piece of metal turns into a sword.
That is for sure. Dr. Alexander, closing comments.
I think that was apropos. I don't think that we need to add to that.
Neither do I. I just want to say thank you to Reverend Jackson for his sacrifice, his leadership, and his example. A lot of people assume that if he willingly ran for president, when in fact he did not. He tried to get Maynard Jackson. He tried to get Andrew Jackson, but he was the one that was selected, and he took on that sacrifice. And that's just one of many. And so what I would suggest is that we all bask in his greatness, his elegance, his earthiness. This is a man that fit in the White House and in backyard barbecues. He's notorious for that. And, in terms of walking with kings and keeping the common touch, this man is the exact picture. Mike, you wanted to add something?
Just one last thing on behalf of my fraternity brother. I think because he did, that's another imprint of being a Q, but walk with kings and keep the common touch.
Kept the common touch.
Yeah, I think he would tell you when you said thank you. I think he would say you didn't owe him gratitude because what he did was not a gift. So you don't have to thank him for it. That was his assignment. Okay. And you can salute him for a job well done, but you don't owe him thanks, I don't think. I think he thought that was the mission.
That would be the response I would expect, and I would tell him to learn how to take a compliment, because because that is the sacrifice that he made is personal, and it no one understands. We are now getting into weathering. It tickles me when people come up with sayings that we've lived and known about. But we talk about weathering now and the negative impact that this racial climate has on our health, and morbidity, and every meaningful classification as it relates to being a human being. But in addition to that, he was on the front line, and no one knows what that feels like he does. And he didn't have to do that. He could have amassed a fortune, or a nest egg.
What he did do that, so let's not distort.
I'm not done. That's just one half. He could have amassed a fortune and gone and hid, but he never did. He didn't hide from the lights, to the extent that he could have.
But he wouldn't have been Jesse Jackson. He'd been
He wouldn't have
somebody
been,
else.
and I don't want to over romanticize him. He wasn't perfect,
Right.
by any stretch of the imagination, but
Yeah.
he answered the bell. So
Yeah, right. That's it. That's the point.
yeah, he answered the bell. So we want to thank you all for tuning into the Level Set. And thank you, gentlemen, for just incredible insight as always. And if it's the Lord's will, we shall see you again soon.